Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. Welcome to the Board of Trustees meeting of the Trussville Public Library. Okay. I am Debbie Wade, Chairman of the Board. We will conduct an abbreviated board meeting and then move on to public comments. We ask that you sit quietly while we conduct our board meeting. And please silence your cell phones at this time. I'll call the board meeting to order. We will go over our minutes next month and our financial report next month and go on to the report of the librarian. Jason.
Upcoming closures will be Good Friday through Easter Sunday, and we'll reopen the Monday following.
Is that all we got?
That's all.
All right. At this time, I introduce Jason Baker, the Director of the Trussville Public Library, who will give us a history and overview of what has been happening with the book challenges that have been brought to the library board. Jason.
Thank you for coming. To ensure there was enough room and enough parking for all of you who have concerns, we canceled programming tonight. Specifically, 2 rooms of chess club participants, which is indicative of what we do here every week. We bring science, math, reading, games, and social engagement-oriented programming to kids, teens, and adults. The staff is proud of this programming. Now to, this afternoon. We're gathered here to hear from the first complainant regarding materials held at Trussville Public Library. This is the first concern about content in materials held at TPL in the time that I've been here, which is 15 years. For background, on December 5th of last year, Sheila Wright and 2 guests came to share some concerns about books that she found in TPL. Chief among those concerns expressed that afternoon were sexual orientation, gender identity, or gender discordance. Members of the staff and board met with them and explained the statement of concern process we discussed for a while. I explained that we're a public library and public libraries serve all people in the community. And in an effort to compromise and accommodate, and as a one-time exception to our policy, we agreed to review the list of items that she currently had checked out. I explained that any additional titles that they oppose would need to follow the process, and explained that she could contact us and request a statement of concern for any subsequent titles. As we were wrapping up the meeting, Sheila expressed her expectation that after the conversation, the board would simply move the items to the adult section. Board Chair Debbie Wade reiterated that no decisions would be made without review of the material. The board took the list, reviewed her titles, and we notified Sheila of the decisions. No other statements of concerns were received. Sheila responded by reading a letter at the February board meeting demanding removal of library materials, including and beyond those originally named. And that basically brings us to tonight.
Thank you, Jason. At this time, I will recognize Sheila Wright, who is the complainant of record in this matter. She will have 3 minutes to make her comments.
First of all, it wasn't just...
The mic faces us, so you go on the other side of the mic and face the board.
Face the board.
Because you're talking
I
to
was
the board.
talking to us, yeah. Sorry about that. Okay, so, first, we would like to thank the director.
Oh, it's on.
First, we would like to thank...
Just speak into the microphone.
Real close.
First, we would like to thank the director and library board for allowing us to further present our concerns. And we thank everyone for being here for this important meeting. As stated in our letter of February 17th, we are asking that the Trussville Library Board clean up the Trussville Library by removing all material with inappropriate content as outlined in the letter involving minors or advertised for minors. We are totally opposed to simply moving the material to the adult department where it is still accessible. We wish to protect minors from indoctrination and exposure to what most of us consider unhealthy. I'm sorry, I'm shaking. It is concerning to us that the board book, B&U, can I sit down? So is that okay? Okay. Sorry.
Yeah, let's have you sit and then I'll have you hold the microphone. Okay. Oh, can I?
Oh,
let
but
me
you need to
turn
face, you're talking to
I'm
the
gonna
board.
bring it back. And then I'm just gonna hang this.
Just push it in.
As stated in our letter of February the 17th, we are asking that the Trussville Library Board clean up the Trussville Library by removing all material with inappropriate content as outlined in the letter involving minors or advertised for minors. We are totally opposed to simply moving this material to the adult department where it is still accessible. We wish to protect minors from indoctrination and exposure to what most of us consider unhealthy. It is concerning to us that the board book, B&U, A First Conversation About Gender for Children, including toddlers, states that it is never too early to begin the conversation on gender. Contents include, is it okay to wonder, am I a girl, am I a boy, am I both, am I neither? There's no right or wrong answer, and it is okay if your answer changes. The book, Sex is a Funny Word for Children, contains graphic drawings of nude adult males and females and includes a section on masturbation, which is when you touch your middle parts to get that warm and tingly feeling. It then asks if your family has rules about touching yourself, and if so, do they make sense to you? Since when should we be asking children their opinion on this subject? It also includes drawings of children masturbating outside. The fantasy books written by Sarah Maas are deeply concerning. This author, who has become popular with teens, has progressed in her writings to now involve...
That's 3 minutes.
3 minutes are up.
I think some of my time was used trying to...
They accounted for it.
Thank you, Sheila.
Thank you, Sheila.
At this time, I will recognize Marty Slade, a library patron and member of the Trussville Friends of the Library, who has some comments. Marty.
Or you can hold it.
My name is Marty Slade with Reed Freely Trussville. I've lived in Trussville for nearly 30 years, and my husband and I raised our 2 children here. I'm a freelance writer, a Christian active in my church, and a lover of our library. I started bringing our children here as toddlers, and when they were old enough to print their names on the signature line, they got their own library cards. We signed up every year for summer reading and attended activities throughout the year. They're adults now, but I've continued to visit the library because I know firsthand how much the library can mean to a child's academic success and an adult's career. I believe that fiction teaches truths, and nonfiction, well written, expands minds. I believe in public libraries and the vast wealth of knowledge they offer to everyone, regardless of background, belief, or income. They are the bedrock of our democracy. When I brought my children here, I watched what books they looked at, checked which ones they chose, and read to them and with them over the years. Once, a middle school teacher recommended a book for my son about a 15-year-old boy on the spectrum. The F word was sprinkled throughout, and the teacher warned me about the language, so I read the book first. My children did not hear offensive language at our house, so I was concerned. But I ultimately decided that the story was a good one, and the lesson about people who are different than we are was more important than profanity. I believed he had the moral foundation and strength of character to read a book about someone who used questionable language without adopting it himself. It is safe to say, lo, these 15 or so years later, that he was not in any way scarred by reading the F word at a young age. He did, however, prove to be a brilliant, compassionate, and understanding man. Many here would have this book removed from the shelves because of its language. I felt it was an important book for my son to read and learn from. That's the beauty of a public library. There is something for everyone, and as American citizens, we have the freedom to choose. No one has the right to tell me or other parents what we think is best for our children. It pains me that so many are afraid of the books on these shelves. Books expand our minds and provide experiences we otherwise couldn't afford. They enable us to understand others through the written page. A 101-year-old Florida woman whose husband died in 1944 fighting the Nazis recently spoke out saying, "Banning books and burning books are the same. Both are done for the same reason, fear of knowledge. Fear is not freedom. Fear is not liberty. Fear is control." End quote. I'm grateful to the library board and the staff for protecting our freedom and our constitutional American right to read. Stand strong. And I want to say to the audience, if you're here to oppose the banning,
That's the end of the 3 minutes. Thank you, Marty. We will now have public comments. Public comments are limited to Trussville residents. I will recognize each person in the order they signed in. Your comments will be limited to 3 minutes, and our public comment time is limited to 30 minutes total. You may not read from the challenged books during your comments. This is not a time for debate. Let's please be courteous. Those who are not speaking are asked to remain silent. If you interrupt, interfere with the speaker, or make comments other than when recognized as a speaker, you will be asked to leave. If you agree with someone who has already spoken, please just say so that others may have the opportunity to speak. At this time, I will call on Jennifer Corpus to make her comments.
My name is Jennifer.
Step closer.
My name is Jennifer, and I'm an Air Force wife and a homeschooling mom. I've seen the sacrifices my husband makes to defend the freedom of this great country. Tonight, we are so privileged to engage in democratic dialogue. Our freedom to express different opinions stems from the Constitution, which also allows books to be available at the public library. I pray that we do not lose sight of our shared identity as humans and as Americans. I am proud to be an American and proud to be a patriot. What I'm not proud of is when that same freedom that my husband has sworn to protect is infringed upon here in the Trussville Library, where my 5 and 2-year-old come to learn about people who are different than them. It is not our right to control what other people have access to. No group has the right to impose their concept of morality onto others in a democracy. The free flow of public information should not and cannot be restricted by the government. It's irresponsible to use taxpayer money towards book banning when the answer is simple. Parents should parent their own children. My library card is linked to my daughter's library card. You can see what your child checks out. It is not a secret. We deserve the freedom to choose the books best for our children. I am perfectly capable of vetting what my kids choose to read, and it's my right to parent how I want. I've read many of the books on the challenge list. I read a lot. I was a bookworm growing up, and I'm a bookworm today. The books on the list which I've read, I do not consider to be inappropriate. What's defined as inappropriate is different for everyone. A college student has a different opinion than an 85-year-old grandma. The 9th commandment says, "Thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor," and claims that liken our library to an adult bookstore are preposterous and false. Multiple Supreme Court rulings have upheld the right to access information and struck down attempts to ban, restrict, and segregate books based on ideological views. It's not only unpopular, but it has cost book ban proponents presidential bids. Our library serves all citizens, including our Christian community, with its inspirational fiction, something most libraries don't have. And if one group is allowed to start banning books, where does it stop? The library is here for everyone, and they're already following procedure. There are forms parents can fill out if there's a book found that's inappropriate. I support the board and their current policy. The policies in place are sufficient to protect our children. I support our librarians and the Trussville Library's right to constitutional librarianship. And everyone who opposes book bans, could you please stand up?
Thank you. Please be seated. Thank you, Jennifer. Our next commenter will be Becky Blackman.
Staying close.
Good afternoon, my name is Becky Blackman. Trussville has been my home since 1991. I'm proud to say that I received my education from Trussville, and before my father even took me to my kindergarten orientation, he drove me to get my public library card. I graduated here and ran into Ms. Herring, who taught me speech in the 10th grade. This is for you. Both of my children are now students in Trussville City Schools. I fully endorse the proactive measures undertaken by our library in categorizing certain publications as adult while maintaining their availability for circulation. The librarians, experts in their field, diligently oversee this process on a daily basis. Their actions not only uphold our constitutional rights to free speech and free press, but also provide valuable guidance to readers regarding age-appropriate materials. Their dedication and competence in executing their duties are commendable, and I unequivocally support them. As citizens, it is incumbent upon us to uphold the values of a society that cherishes our freedoms, those fundamental rights enshrined by our founding fathers as the pursuit of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Despite thorough research, I have found no evidence or data directly linking reading to the violation of any of these rights or to violence against innocent individuals. Therefore, I steadfastly advocate for the presence of literature and free press in our public libraries. It is imperative that organizations reflect inwardly and address their own involvement in activities proven to incite violence and harm, rather than insinuating an unfounded correlation between publications that encourage diversity of thought as having any potential to pose danger. It is both reckless and irresponsible to vilify literature that fosters the expression of ideas and perspectives. When will we cease targeting minority groups simply because they do not conform to our own beliefs and identities? 2 centuries ago it was the Native American. 6 decades ago it was the African American. Today it's the lesbian, the gay man, the bisexual, the transgender, and the queer community. It is my firm belief and my experience that the individuals who identify and are a part of the lesbian, the gay, bisexual, transgender, or queer community, along with all of the other marginalized groups, are not the threats to a peaceful society. Our public library is a community service funded by our government through stipends and taxation, and needs to serve everyone in our community.
Our next speaker is Matt Georgia. Did I pronounce it right?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Matt Georgia. I've been a Trussville resident for almost 12 years now. Before that, I spent 14 years in the Marine Corps. During that time, I did 4 deployments overseas into combat zones where I was sent to defend freedom. I did not
Thank you for your service.
Thank you. I did not think I would have to come back to America and continue to defend that freedom so that our children could read what they want to read. We as parents can decide what is appropriate or inappropriate for our children without input from the community. Author Neil Gaiman has a very relevant quote that says, "There are no bad authors for children because every child is different. They can find the stories they need to, and they bring themselves to those stories." Every child is different. Every child is ready for different subjects, and every family is different. The morals of some people may not match up with the morals of myself and my family, and there's nothing wrong with that. Just like I would not tell them what they can and cannot believe, I do not want them to tell us what we can and cannot believe. I've looked through the list, I've read some of the books on that list. A lot of the reasons they are listed on the Cleanup Alabama is listed because of sexual content or language. I'll agree, there is language in these books. And when I was a teenager, I read books with language in them. However, looking through that list, the similarity that I see between all these books is not necessarily language, because there's plenty of books in the library that have language. It is LGBTQ and racial justice books that have been targeted by these groups. We're taking marginalized groups and trying to stifle the little voice that they have in our library and take that away from them. There's very little content available to these groups, and we need to keep it available for them. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Maria Knowles.
Can I just take this?
Yes.
You can.
Thank you, everybody on the board. I really appreciate your service to our community. I feel like I need to ease some fears here before I start. I'm just a Mimi. I'm not a satanic cult member. But I'm afraid that for political reasons, there are people stoking fear and turning us against each other. Here's the reality. We know each other. We might go to church together. We're your neighbors, your teachers, your friends, your local librarians and board members. We don't have a scary agenda. My mom's funeral was 2 weeks ago today. She told hospice staff that she wanted an absentee ballot so she'd be able to vote in the next election. My dad, Lieutenant Colonel E.J. Martina, was a fighter pilot during World War II and then in Korea. We take democracy seriously in my family. So what does this have to do with our library? Well, that same fighter pilot used to take his kids to the library every other Saturday. We thought it was glorious that we could take home as many books as we wanted. He told us this was because America's special, that our founding fathers wanted us to be an educated populace, and that our libraries were a free means to that education. Dad's parents didn't speak English, he didn't go to college, but he knew more than anyone I ever met, because that man read everything he could get his hands on. After 30 years in the Air Force, Dad retired and spent most days at the Springville Road Library reading newspapers and magazines and every book he picked up. If he missed more than 2 days, a staff member called my mom to check and make sure he was okay. That's how much he loved his library. He understood that access to books meant unlimited knowledge. Some of you have decided that you get to control that knowledge, that banning certain books is a good idea. Do you think you could tell that to my dad? Colonel Martina did not step into a tiny cockpit and head into enemy fire so that one day we'd be contemplating censorship in this country. That's what authoritarian governments do, not ours. You guys are stepping on a slippery slope here. If you get your list of books banned, which ones are next? And what are your qualifications to make those decisions for the rest of us? These guys know what they're doing. I've tried to listen and understand you don't want your kids or anybody else's to be influenced by books you don't approve of. But you know what? That's not how America works. I'm sure there are some books I wouldn't want my grandkids reading. Not yet. Shoot, there are things in the Bible I don't want them reading.
Our next speaker is Maron Hor.
Hello, my name is Maron Hor. I'm a Trussville resident since 1989 and a friend of the library, and thank you for your time. Excuse me if I reference my notes. I'm a proud Christian and believer in Jesus, and the same Jesus that washed the feet of prostitutes and also welcomed a thief into heaven and told us, "Judge not, lest ye be judged, and he who has no sin cast the first stone." And that sentiment is what fuels my beliefs. I also work in the medical field, and I work diligently to help all people despite their background, without prejudice and without hesitation. And that's also what this library does. It's good for the community. I've seen it stand up for its citizens since I've been here, and I've watched their diligent work help our community, help tutor children, help teach children how to read, and they also do that without prejudice and without hesitation. It saddens me that people would want to interfere with their work. You know, I'm unfamiliar with a lot of material that people want to be banned, but I'm against any kind of oppression, nature, or censorship. And my trust and faith is in this library, and it should be left in their capable hands. They do the hard work. They do the good work to help our community, stand up for our community, help our children. And our faith should be in them, as they have shown over the past 20 years that they care about everyone that comes in here. And we shouldn't inject any kind of prejudice or stipulations on their ability to work and do their job. And I will leave you with this. We hold it to be self-evident that all persons are created equal and that are endowed by the Creator with certain inalienable rights. That among these are life, liberty, the enjoyment of the fruits of their own labor, and the pursuit of happiness. Many people have died for that sentence, and it would be a shame if it was left in vain. And it would also be a shame if the censorship goes through, that this library's hard work is in vain. Okay, thank you.
Our next speaker will be Esther Glenn.
Thank you very much for having me today. Thank you for the hard work that you do and the tireless way that you help our citizens. My name is Esther Glenn, and I am a long-term resident of Trussville, married to an even longer resident of Trussville. I have 4 children. We homeschool all of our children with the help of this library. Libraries are so important to me because my parents, a minister and a teacher, took me to the bookmobile in my very rural town from the time I could walk. My children came here from the time they could walk, and even before. We utilize this library to homeschool them, to teach them that all people have value, and to teach them about different worlds. As a homeschool parent, I am so grateful I live in a country that gives me the freedom to homeschool, to teach my values, and to teach them the way that I see fit. I was able to teach them what our values were. That freedom to teach and parent my children extended to choosing their books with them. Sometimes there were times when they chose a book that I wasn't sure about. So I did what my parents did for me. I took the book and I read it, and then I discussed that with my child. I parented my child the way that I wanted to. This public library is for all families of all kinds and all values. If there is a book that you deem inappropriate or incompatible with your values for any reason, this library has a policy and a procedure for handling that. However, the library has come under attack for these books, but I believe that these library policies can and should be allowed to handle every challenge that's brought before it, because these are the professionals and we need to let them do their job. The library professionals that we are so lucky to have here in Trussville work tirelessly to bring us so much more than books. And we are so grateful that they serve all citizens. To people like me who've spent many years homeschooling, to people who have children in public schools, we have the freedom to use this library. Christians like me, Buddhists like some of my friends, gay or straight. This library is a resource for all of us and should remain so. Thank you.
Our next speaker is David Teal.
Hello, I'm David Teal. I'm the senior pastor of All Saints Young Methodist Church, a new church plant here in Trussville, Alabama. I want to start off by talking about my own experience growing up. I grew up living in a very poverty-stricken family. We didn't have very many resources. We lived on a small farm in Rainbow City, Alabama. One of my favorite outlets growing up, though, and finding something beyond our family, was reading. And I loved to read so much. I read Gone with the Wind when I was in 5th grade during the summer. That's a thick book if you don't read it. And I was also the top 5th grade reader. And I found that as I was reading, that opened up a world vastly in front of me. One to explore, one that widened my imagination and activated my action to connect with others and to see the way that we can function together for the betterment of all of us. I feel like we have an opportunity to continue to expand the memories, the experiences of all of our children by making sure that Trussville remains a read-freely zone. Still today, I enjoy coming to the library and going to the children's section with my little toddler, Sophia. We love playing with the Legos and the train sets, and we love reading the books. And one of the most profound differences I see when I come to the library today versus 30 years ago is just the diversity of the offerings we have all around the space. When I can pick up a book, and now I can see black and brown and white children playing together, and I can tell my daughter, look, there's so many different people, and we can live together, and we can play together, and all will be well. Or I can look over and I can see a book that talks about how do you handle it when you lose someone you love, and recognize, hey, our library is including books that talks about the emotions we all experience even as toddlers, and helping our children process their grief and their feelings. All of these books provide for us an opportunity to acknowledge that we struggle in life and that we need support along the way from one another. I love reading these books and talking about the people living on the margins, because the stories that they tell are stories that connect us all. Their stories are stories of experiences of gays and lesbians, of the poor, of the hurting, of all of those individuals who are different and would not be accepted in the mainstream. And as we read those stories, we recognize that all of them point to the truth, that we are diverse, that we are unique, that we are special, just the way we are. Our church's vision statement is to be a welcoming church community that mirrors inclusivity and compassion of Jesus, embraces diversity, celebrates the transformative power of grace, and fosters an authentic, joyful environment where all individuals can grow in their faith, find connection, and experience the love of God. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Amy O'Brien.
Dear Trussville Public Library Board members and my fellow community members, my name is Amy O'Brien. I live in Trussville. As a parent of young children, I feel compelled to speak today. Like just about everyone else we know, my husband and I provide access to the internet and TV in our family home. We choose what content and programs our children can and cannot watch and read in our home, based on our values and what we consider age appropriate. Very often, what we consider age appropriate does not align with TV ratings, and family programming does not align with our family values. So, as responsible parents, we do not rely solely on those ratings or the content of family programming to determine what our children consume. It is exactly the same with books. I'm a person of faith. I have strong convictions. I value that I live in a country with many freedoms granted to myself and others with viewpoints that differ from my own. I do not expect a public library to provide only content that aligns with my personal values and morals any more than I would expect public TV or internet providers to do so. Equally, I do not support the banning of books that do not align with my values any more than I would want the library to be able to ban the books and content that I value. This is not the library's role. They provide a vast array of resources. It's my role as a parent to determine the content my children consume and to provide them context for it. It is the mandate of a public library to serve the general public's information needs rather than the needs of a particular institution, a school, or population. The Trussville Public Library lives up to that. The mission of the Trussville Public Library is to promote the joy of reading, the power of ideas, and lifelong learning. The library also has a child safety policy that clearly states the roles and responsibilities of parents, guardians, and caregivers who are the library's partners in providing a pleasant and safe environment for all patrons. I understand some opposing viewpoints from my own are expressed from some members of North Park Baptist Church. My children attended daycare at North Park, and we had wholesome experiences there. I know book banning viewpoints do not reflect the entire congregation there because I have friends there who frequent this library with their families and young children. My family also frequents this library for books, programs, events, meetings with classmates and peers, and more. My children have grown up with this library. As citizens of Trussville, we feel very fortunate to have such a resource.
Your time is up. Thank you. Our next speaker is Chris Womack.
Good afternoon. I'm Chris Womack.
You're going to have to speak.
Hello.
You may
Is
have
that
to
better?
hold it close to your mouth.
All right.
There you go.
There we go. All right. Thank you. So, as a homeschooling parent and 7-year resident of Trussville, one of the highlights of this city is the Trussville Library. Throughout our homeschooling journey, we've been able to count on the library and Jefferson County system to have the resources we've needed to support our children's education. I'd like to thank the Trussville Library Board and all the library staff for their continued diligence and dedication to providing a diverse catalog of materials for library members. I appreciate the fact that should I ever have concerns about the content of the library, there is an established process to present and discuss those concerns. I also want to thank the Mayor and Trussville City Council for their continued vision and support to keep Trussville a desirable place to live with a bright future. Now, to those of you who are here in support of book banning, first, Trussville Library has nearly 80,000 physical items, and there were only 41 that were recently called into question. The Library Board has already taken steps to address your concerns, which I wanted to make sure you were aware of their prompt response. Secondly, the threat of book banning is nothing but fear-mongering and polarization. Book banning is censorship, plain and simple. Censorship is a political tactic used by past and present dictators in communist countries to limit free thought, innovation, and control their citizens. In other words, to keep them ignorant. The censorship you are proposing is aiming to put blinders on your kids and other Trussville citizens. Censorship is the extremist way of dealing with subjects that you do not like or do not understand, or both. When you fan the flames of book banning, you are inciting people to take up an unnecessary action. Book banning is like your doctor proposing to amputate your arm when the symptom is a splinter in your finger. Completely avoidable. There is an established process which has been available for years to address any concerns without the use of this extreme measure. Furthermore, this approach of outright banning books and other content causes people, including your children, to be less resilient to new things in their lives. If they cannot intake, process, and decide with their own mind what to do with new information and what it means to them, then what good are we doing them? That's the basis of critical thinking. Unless you are taking away your kids' smartphones, computers, then they already have access to dangerous content on social media or elsewhere on the internet 24 hours a day. In targeting the Trussville Library, you are laying blame in the wrong direction. Take accountability for raising your kids and being present in their lives and observe what they are consuming. I'm an actively engaged parent and Trussville citizen who does not need you or anyone else to control what I, my kids, or anyone else is reading. Parent your kids and let the Trussville Library continue to serve our community as it has for many years.
Our final speaker today will be Amanda Clinco.
Good afternoon. My name is Amanda Clinco. I'm a Trussville resident, a retired music teacher who invested some 22 years of my life and the lives of children in each of the 4 former Hewitt Trussville schools. And I'm also a church music director. Why am I here today? I'm here because I'm truly concerned about our liberty, our freedom to choose what we wish to read. Liberty and freedom are 2 very important words in the lives of the American people. My husband devoted 42 years of his life protecting our freedom as American citizens. I simply could not stand by without attempting to voice my concerns with the possibility of banning books from our Trussville library. Books are dangerous. Books make us think. They make us feel. And they make us ask questions. The way to control people is to stop them from thinking, feeling, and asking questions. I have a brilliant daughter and 2 granddaughters with unlimited potential. All of them are avid readers. They love spending time here in this library. My husband and others like him have and are protecting them and all of us from real threats. They don't need protection from books. Americans stand up for what they believe, and my family has done it for years, standing against societies that limit freedoms, censor, and seek to control what people can read and think. This effort seeks to limit our freedoms. Out of fear, those wishing to ban don't trust Americans to make their own decisions. One of our librarians, or one staff member, told me just today that this past year, 100,000 people visited this library without one complaint. In closing, I skipped a sentence. This effort seeks to limit our freedoms. Out of fear, those wishing to ban don't trust Americans to make their own decisions. I think I said that, sorry. In closing, I implore those with decision-making authority to assure each and every citizen with the freedom and liberty to choose what he or she wishes to read. It is our God-given right. Thank you.
Public comment time has expired. I thank you for your interest in the Trussville Public Library. The Library Board made an exception to policy in order to review a list of 41 items brought to our attention. Our policy is to have a statement of concern submitted to the board for review for each item challenged, but we made an exception and reviewed the entire list. There have been no other statements of concern. These are the only items we are addressing today. Each item was carefully reviewed by board members. A decision was made to delete 11 items because they did not meet the criteria for retention because of very low circulation numbers. We left 5 items where we felt they were appropriately shelved. We had 7 items moved to the adult department because we felt they contained adult content. 18 items with mature teen content will be moved to an area in the adult section labeled to indicate mature teen or mature young adult content. Our teen department is not large enough to separate young teen and mature teen content. We did not want young teens to come across these mature subject matters and felt they should be moved to another area. Jason is currently researching how to set up that area in the adult department. Some materials in a public library are controversial, and any given item may offend someone. Materials purchased by the library are not an endorsement by the library of either the content or viewpoint presented in them. While anyone is personally free to reject books and other materials, you may not restrict the free choice of others. You are free to select or reject materials for yourself or your minor children, but may not restrict the freedom of others to use or access materials or information. Parents and guardians are responsible for guiding and directing the reading, listening, and viewing choices of minor children. The library does not stand in place of the parent. Up to age 15, every child's library card is connected to a parent's card. And the parent can look at those, the parent is able to see anything the child checks out of the library upon request. If you have seen some of these TPL by the numbers sheets, you can see that the Trussville Public Library is a marvelous and busy place, a jewel in our community. Jason does a great job directing our excellent and helpful staff. 8,968 children attended programs at the library in 2023, and 139,029 items were checked out, all without a single complaint. I've been on the library board for 23 years, and we've never had a complaint about the items in our library until Sheila brought in this list. You parents are obviously doing a wonderful job monitoring your children's library choices. The library board feels that we have made appropriate decisions regarding these 41 items. We have researched applicable law concerning freedom of speech and First Amendment rights, and like it or not, we must conform to current laws which restrict removing books for content. Therefore, we stand by our decisions. And did not have a chance today, you're welcome to submit comments in writing to any library. Excuse me.
Wouldn't do any good now.
Comment time is over.
Excuse me. No comments, please, or you'll be taken out.
This was one-sided meeting.
Officer, would you remove this lady, please?
You gotta be kidding.
Thank you. If you wish to comment and did not have a chance today, you are welcome to submit comments in writing to any library employee who will forward them to the board, or you may comment online at the Trussville Public Library site. Do I hear a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
All in favor?
Second. Need a second. We need a second.
A second?
Oh.
Second. And all in favor?
Aye.
This meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.